The following is a presentation of the Six Arrows Radio Network.
Ham Radio 360 podcast, catching up with Stuart Thomas, Kilo Bravo 1, Hotel Quebec Sierra. Yeah, you know, the number one activator for the national parks on the air, coming up.
MTCRadio.com presents Ham Radio 360, the podcast, with your host, Cale Nelson, K4CDN.
And welcome back in to another episode of the Ham Radio 360 podcast. Thanks so much again for stopping by. Happy New Year, everyone. Really excited to be here with you as we ring in 2017. Got a sinus thing going on. Sorry about that. It's just that time of year. We survived the Snowmageddon in South Carolina, at least here on the farm. We got about 1/4 inch of snow in less than 6 hours. It was all gone. The streets were dry and the kids were very disappointed. So wherever you are, because I know we've had some crazy weather throughout this last couple of weeks here in the States, be safe, be careful, stay warm. And again, thank you for spending this time with us. You know, you don't have to do this, and I always like to bring that fact up. You come by here and get this program to enjoy, hopefully learn along with me as well. So really tickled to have you in. Got to give a big shout out to Jeremy and George, still doing a great job at the Workbench podcast. It airs the opposite week of this program. And the last time they were on, they discussed components, and they have not told me what to expect the next time. So make sure you stay here, right here in this feed, and every other week you'll get the Workbench, and opposing weeks you get myself. Ringing in the new year with new sponsors here on the Ham Radio 360 podcast. A very special thank you to Elecraft for coming on board. Look forward to continuing our relationship with you as we move forward here. And really excited to be able to tell you that, you know, Winter Field Day's right here. We're virtually on top of it now. If you're needing a portable rig possibly to take out and operate for Winter Field Day, what not a better choice than the Elecraft KX3. You can find them online at elecraft.com. And I would be remiss not to tell you about our friends down at MTCRadio.com. They've got a special sale right now on the Kenwood TS480 and the Kenwood TS480HX. Yeah, both of them discounted right now on sale at MTCRadio.com. In addition to the already great prices, how about another $10 off? That's right, coupon code HR360 to save an additional $10 off on either of the Kenwood TS480 models from MTCRadio.com. And being the new year, you know, that means there's new things that have started and old things that have stopped. And one of the old things that have stopped has been an incredibly popular amateur radio event that went all the way through the year 2016. And we've got with us none other, ladies and gentlemen, than the number one activator of all things national parks on the air, the Centennial Celebration with the ARRL and the National Park Service. Folks, give it up for my friend and yours, KB1HQS, Stuart Thomas.
Thanks, Cale. Thanks for having me on.
Man, totally excited to have you on. Congratulations, Mr. Number One Activator.
There was a lot of activations. What can I say? There was a lot of portable operations.
Yeah, congratulations really to everyone who participated in this event. I remember back when you and I spoke, I think it was in the spring, maybe early summer. I was still kind of in shock that it had become what it had become. Stuart, when you first heard about the National Parks on the Air celebrating the centennial of the Park Service along with the ARRL coming in and having this event, did you really think that it would become what it did?
I don't think anybody did. I think it started out kind of slow, and then it just picked up steam. And even by the end of the year, I mean, by the end of last month, it was just going crazy. It was like a DX expedition every week.
It was, I joined up on the Facebook group, and every time I would open Facebook up, it would be National Park on the Air stuff. And it wasn't just a little bit. I mean, it was just page after page. And we'll talk about the Facebook group, I'm sure, in just a little bit. But wow, how many actual QSOs were logged up to this point that you're aware of? As of right now, because people are still kind of uploading some logs, but they passed the million
million QSO mark, I think in the end of December. So it wasn't that long ago that they hit 1 million QSOs.
Oh my gosh. Now, how many activations do you know how many activations they were actually made?
They hit about 20,000. There's a little more than that at this point, but the last I heard was 20K. 20K and the 1 million QSOs were kind of the big benchmarks that ARRL came up with to kind of help push things along and keep it going, which everybody took up and ran with.
Now, was that on the front end kind of a thing, or was this as the snowball started really coming down the hill, they thought, hey, we could actually do this? Did it kind of come in later in the game? Yeah,
the numbers thing I think kind of came in later. Initially, it's just everybody was just having fun. Well, everybody's having fun till the end, but it just kind of picked up steam on its own. I mean, because this wasn't really supposed to be like a contest. This was just, hey, it's an opportunity to activate and get people on the air. Exactly. It was, and it was an event for everybody to get out, for the activators to get out and operate at the national parks and historic trails, and for the chasers to chase them, and everyone to make contacts and help promote ham radio, which I think they more than succeeded with. Oh my gosh! I mean, one of the guys that scored number 44 on the top 50 is one of our local hams, K4XP Keith, and we had a number 48, and I think Brett was on further down just a little bit. Maybe Keith was 30th. I don't remember. I should have looked it up before I got in, and I apologize, guys. But congratulations to everybody who just who were chasing and activating. I didn't realize back then what it was going to be then, and by the time the end got here, and I'm seeing people, almost to the point they're needing some sort of counseling to get past the fact there's no one activating parks today. Man, it's just I'm still in awe of the whole thing. And it was a team effort. It was about from the person who only maybe chased one park all the way, to the activator who only did, 40 something activations. The numbers overall didn't really matter. It was just a question of, it was more about everybody just getting out and getting on the air is what ultimately it's about. Well, I believe if I counted right, I made 4 contacts. 3 of them were with you. Nice. And that was really cool because we had you here on the show, and I would see you spot yourself, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to run up to the barn, get up here out of breath, because it's uphill. I'm like, KB1HQS, K4CD, And it was so cool to hear you. I mean, of course, any contact is cool, I think. It's because radio is awesome. But sure. We got to meet and kind of hang out some there at the Hamvention. And then you were back down in here in South Carolina later in the year when it was really hot. And yeah, it was hot. It was very hot that day. But, all of that, it's if it really, really honestly, if it weren't for the national parks on the air, you and I probably wouldn't be having this conversation. And that is true. You and I probably wouldn't have got to hang out there at Hamvention. I probably wouldn't have loaded the kids in the van to come up to Cowpens to hang out with you during your activation here in South Carolina. But, that's just 2 people who befriended one another through this thing. I have seen people who've become best buddies with people they've never met, maybe never will meet in this whole process. And to me, it just really helped the amateur radio service, the hobby, whichever one of those 2 you want to call it. It just really made it shine with how it brings people together. Yeah, no question about it. I met a ton of new people, and the social media thing really kind of helped, give some, I guess, backstory and get to know people better versus just on the air. Well, of course, you can meet people on the air, but the whole social media thing definitely helps that as well. So, yeah, it was a really, really great event. I'm glad I was able to take part in it. So, do you think you had an unfair advantage by living in the crux or in the cradle? I guess you should say the cradle of national parks. Yeah, I definitely had a home advantage, no question about it. Me and everybody else that lived in this area, and throughout the United States, there's other pockets too that happened to have a lot of national park properties. But it's still at the end of the day, you had to get off the couch, you had to load all the gear up, and you had to go. So. It's up to the individual. I know I had a total of 503 activations and 108 points as far as a chaser. Nice. And then over 10,000 QSOs, which isn't really a lot compared to other people. Right. But considering the gear I was using, which I can talk about later, there's a reason for that number. Yeah. Well, I mean, my goodness, man, 10,000 QSOs, that's probably about 9,900
50 more than I've made on HF in the last 4 or 5 years. So, and you did it in really less than a year's time.
Yeah, it was a year.
Right at a year? Okay.
Yeah, because it was right at the end of December. So.
Okay. So, yeah, it was ridiculous. 503 activations. Guys, to activate a park, I'll let you tell us, Stuart, what did it take to activate a park for the national parks on the year?
So assuming you picked out the location that's been approved by ARRL as a national park site, whether it's a trail, a river, a park, whatever, you would go to that area and then activate it, meaning you'd have to make at least a minimum of 10 contacts in order to activate the park.
Yeah, 10 contacts.
So that would qualify.
Which, and you said we'd talk equipment later, but QRP, that's kind of tough, I would imagine.
Oh, no question. Yeah, and 80% of my contacts were QRP with some really bad antennas. So I kind of did it because I wanted to see if I could do it. Sure, a lot of people do QRP, but there's always people that are saying that QRP isn't doable, and especially with this propagation and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go do it. And I had the KX3, so that's what I did.
Yeah, go Elecraft. Hey, you didn't just hang around D.C., though. Like I'd mentioned just a moment ago, you came down here to South Carolina, North Carolina. You were all over the place. What are some of the crazy places or furthest from the area you live in that you actually activated?
It's kind of a toss-up between Texas, the Big Thicket Preserve, which is down in southeast Texas. And it was kind of interesting. We were parking in this small parking lot, and this guy comes out, and the water was coming up because they had a lot of flooding. He's like, "You guys want to watch out for the alligators?" And I was like, "I don't know if he was serious or not," but I wasn't going to hang around. And then Maine, Acadia National Park, which I actually just came back from just this week, so I got to activate that twice.
Sweet. So what took you to Texas? Just wanted to go to Texas, or was it a family trip and you took the rig?
Family trip, yeah. It was just a family trip.
Cool. He was all over the place, guys. How many miles did you put on your Subaru?
I probably put on about 10,000, give or take. But there's other guys. One guy, Bob N4CD, I think he put on 50K. He had like a new car and put on 50K.
Oh my gosh! He's like,
so,
can I turn this lease in now?
Aren't that impressive? Yeah, exactly. Ready for a new one.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, Maine, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, the D.C. area, Pennsylvania, and Texas. That's about as many states as I've visited in my 43 years of living.
Time to get on the road.
Did you have a favorite park or one that you might have activated more often than others?
Yeah, there's probably two of them. Appalachian Trail, which runs from Georgia to Maine, and in order to activate that trail, you have to be portable. So I really like going out in the woods, setting up a hammock with the KX3 and Pactena infed or dipole and making contacts. That was a lot of fun. Cool. And then the other one was Thomas Stone National Historic Site, which is down in southern Maryland. And if you're a ham radio operator and you're in this area and you want to operate a national park, that is the place to go, because the two rangers that work there, the supervisor, Ranger David, and Ranger Youssef, they are very pro ham radio, and we're more than happy to have me there anytime. And in fact, I became really good friends with both of them. And Ranger Youssef actually got on the air with me a couple of times. I gave him the mic and said, "This is what you do," and off he went. And I have a YouTube video of it on my channel, and it's pretty funny. And in fact, he decided he wanted to become a ham, so the ARRL sent him a free tech book so that he could study and get his tech license.
Well, go ARRL. That's awesome. I was getting ready to ask you, how many people did you convert this year? So at least one that you're aware of?
Yeah, I'd say at least one.
Nice. Well, hey, there's 700,001 of us now, so that's good stuff. And that's good for the league to realize that, hey, what not a better way to continue growing this hobby, this service out by putting stuff in people's hands. So good job on them. I got to ask you, how many parks in one day were the most that you actually activated?
Oh, man, a couple months ago, I decided to my wife, first of all, I have to give a disclaimer. My wife was out of town, so I decided I was at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was going to start in D.C. and work my way until I got tired of activating or no one would answer my calls. So I did 13 in one day, and I started, like I said, 7 in the morning. I finished 9 at night. and finished out by Shenandoah National Park. So, and I think someone else has done more. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you.
Right.
I just wanted to see how many I could do. So.
Yeah, I know Vance has done a lot in one day. A NOPTA-thon, I believe is what he might have called it, but I cannot remember the number he tried to activate, or he did activate. And Vance, I'm sorry that I didn't pull that down before I got started. Guys, we're chatting with our buddy KB1HQS. His name's Stuart Thomas. He's got a great YouTube channel, an amazing website. You can find it on the hamradio360.com website. He's one of our content providers there. Just scroll on down, and he is the number one activator in the national parks on the air this year. And if you haven't participated in this, or maybe you've been living under a rock for the last 12 months in amateur radio and all that's going on around it, this has been a tremendously popular event, and I know Cutsko has got to be out of breath. He's probably sitting in a recliner somewhere still trying to catch his breath up there at the league, trying to get everything going and keeping it all together. Yeah, this was one of the big shockers. You know, the W1AWs 2 years or 3 years ago, whatever it was really popular and had a lot of success. But I think for whatever reason, man, this was just perfect timing. And I got to give big kudos to the league for putting this out there and getting it together. People are begging for something to know what to do now. So I know there's some alternatives that people are out there working on. Maybe we'll chat about those in just a little bit. But Stuart, we're going to come right back with you if that's cool. I want to talk about some of the other things that you experienced during your time activating national parks on the air. Just the other day, a gentleman asked on one of the Facebook groups what we would recommend for a brand new HF rig from ICOM. Now, of course, 99% of the people said the ICOM IC7300. The other 1 or 2 maybe percent of folks recommended the 7100. Both of them phenomenal rigs, maybe suited to different needs. So if you're looking for an all-band, all-mode, check out the 7100. If you're interested in the latest and the greatest, an SDR with knobs, make sure you check out the IC7300. You'll find the best deals on either of those, maybe both, down at mtcradio.com. Yes, we are on here with KB1HQS. Stuart Thomas from the D.C. metro area. Stuart is the number one activator with 503 activations in the National Parks on the Air 2016 ARRL event. We talked about some of your favorite parks that you activated. Stuart, did you have a least favorite during that time?
I did. I had Frederick Douglass in Southeast DC, which for those who aren't familiar with Southeast DC, it's just it's an area that you don't want to go into at any time unless you're heavily up armored with a 50 cal on top, maybe. It's just the park itself is fine. It's just the surrounding neighborhood isn't the greatest. And when I was there, I went twice, and they had a couple issues. The first is that there's a lot of RFI in that area, and it's just constant interference on 40 and 20 meters. It's just really, really bad. Like talking S7, S8 noise. Oh, wow. It's bad. And the other issue I found last time I went there, when you go into and it's a really small park. It basically consists of a parking lot, a visitor center, and the house that belonged to Frederick Douglass. Mm-hmm. And as you go into the parking lot, I backed in and I was sitting there doing my thing, making contacts. And a local from the neighborhood came strolling through with his pants around his, knees. Comes strolling through and checks all the cars to see if they're unlocked.
Oh my gosh! I
was like, "Well, that's interesting." And he wanders off. And Park Police shows up, and I mentioned it to him, and he didn't seem too surprised about it. And he starts to tell me the story about how a visitor came and was doing a tour of the house. When they came back, their car was on blocks and their wheels were gone. Oh my gosh. So I decided not to take the tour that day and decided to head home instead. Yeah. So, that's probably all the places I wouldn't. Frederick Douglass was a cool spot, but I wouldn't want to go there multiple times.
Yeah. That's great. Did you have your dog with you that time?
No, I didn't. Actually, he was at home.
I got you. Because you didn't go very many places without him.
Yeah, he went with me the majority of the time. It kind of depended on where we were going, but yeah, he went a lot. He was a good co-pilot. Cool. What's up with the LBJ Memorial? Yeah, so LBJ Memorial Grove is on the east side of the Pentagon. It's kind of in between the Washington Monument and the Pentagon, and it's a real small park as well. And I've been there numerous times, and I went there one night. That's probably around 7 when the sun was setting. And I parked in my spot. And again, I set up and I'm doing my thing. And all these guys in these cars are just kind of driving around. And I'm like, oh, what's going on here? Like, they're all trying to act like they're busy, but they're not actually doing anything.
Right.
I was really confused. So I went home and did a Google search, and it became really obvious that there was a hot gay cruising site for DC. And so the next time I went, I just couldn't help myself. And they were always kind of checking me out, like, what's he doing? Because I had the antenna and the microphone. It was kind of confusing them. So they'd go by, and I would act like I was reading off their license plates to supposedly whoever on the other end. And so after that, they stopped cruising by me and went elsewhere in the park. They kind of gave me the bubble of security.
Yeah, man, there's never a lack of interesting things to take in, I guess, when you're out there activating these national parks. You saw drug deals, what's the deal with jumper cables, man?
Yeah, so I was at George Washington Parkway, and I pulled in this spot that I go often. It's right next to the Potomac, and there was a sewer grate underneath where I parked. And one day there was not much going on. The band conditions were real bad. And I was like, I'm going to try, having a vertical on a mobile, I'm going to try just putting jumper cables on the chassis of my vehicle and then hook the other end to the sewer grate for, like a little counterpoise radial type thing. Yeah. And why not? And so I did it, and I don't know if it made any difference, but it was fun to try. And people kept coming by. They're like, "Excuse me, sir, do you know there's jumper cables attached to your car to that sewer thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good, thanks." It was, they kind of confused some people, but all in all, it was, I really didn't. Not much really happened. I mean, there were just people out enjoying the parks, and I got to say, a lot of people really like going to the parks.
I was getting ready to ask you that because we've got two here within driving distance of me, and of course, they're all over the country. I was going to ask you because, I don't really think about, hey, I believe I'm going to go to a national park this afternoon, but I know that they're a big draw for people traveling and whatnot. And of course, where you're at, you're seeing a lot of visitors come through because of the nation's capital. What about the parks further out, like the ones in Maine, one in Texas? Were they busy as well throughout the year?
Well, I went to Big Thicket out in Texas. That park is huge, and it's spread out all over the place. So we really didn't see anybody other than that one guy who warned us about the alligators or the crocodiles or whatever they have in Texas. In Maine, Acadia National Park in the summertime is a complete zoo. Gettysburg, I don't care when you go, that place is a zoo as well. The parking lots there are huge, and they get tons and tons of people. It really depends on the park.
Okay.
Acadia this time of year is a lot quieter. There's not a lot going on. It's more of a summer kind of thing.
Okay.
But, some parks are just busy all the time. It really depends on the park.
What is one of the most humbling or sobering things that you saw when you were out this year?
The only one I would to say would be at Arlington. Towards the end of the year, a friend of mine, Jeff, who is the president of the DC Ham Radio Club, he clued me in on the fact that you can park in the parking lot on the top floor at Arlington, and you can operate from there and have it be a legit activation. So I went and activated, and as I was in the middle of a pileup, I noticed about, 7,500 yards away that they were actually burying somebody in a military, funeral procession type thing going on. So,
wow.
So I just QRT'd and out of respect, and figured it wouldn't be, even though it's not like they could hear me, I was in the car, but I just thought, out of respect to the person being buried, not to be in the middle giving out designators and signal reports.
Yeah, because unto itself, that is a very, very reverent time, whether you've ever served or not. I mean, it's
sure, yeah.
It's really hard to describe if you've never participated, and unfortunately, some of us have, and it's wow, yeah. That would definitely kind of pour the water on the fire there for sure.
Yeah, and I should mention we had permission from the NPS there to operate there. So, and around the parking garage, there's new spots obviously of people being buried along, like 50 yards right off of that parking garage. So, wow. I guess they're starting to run out of room from what I understand. But yeah, so it was kind of interesting.
Well, we could have a conversation about the endless wars that we've been involved in for the last 20 years, but we'll leave that one alone because we're not a political show, and I don't want to talk about my buddy that I lost in Iraq today. So, speaking of Iraq, that would be a DX station. How about some DX work? Because it wasn't just, United States nerds chasing you guys. I mean, you had people all over the world participating.
We did, yeah. I had I had 48 total, and two that stood out were Antarctica and the Vatican. The Vatican came out of nowhere. I didn't even recognize the call sign, and I looked it up, and I was like, wow, there's a club call from the Vatican, so that's pretty cool. There was a guy in the Azores that called a lot of times, which was really cool to talk to him. There were some people in Spain, kind of, there's a guy in Belgium, Danny, who I talked to a lot. So we had a lot of regulars when the conditions were right.
Nice.
To be able to pick them up.
Antarctica. Now you've got all these guys that have been chasing Antarctica for years, disappointed that they didn't activate a park to try to maybe snag some rare DX.
Yeah, I'm not 100% that I don't know. I have the call, and I have, I got to look and see it at Logbook. I'm going to check into it and see.
Cool. So you activated 503 different times, and you said you made friends like Danny. Did you have people that you knew they were going to get you no matter what every time you activated? Did you have some regular chasers?
Oh, I did. Yeah, there was definitely there was people that I talked to all the time. In fact, I was looking through my logbook today, and I think I have to double check it, but I'm pretty sure the top chaser was Reno Whiskey Tango 8 Charlie, and he contacted me 68 times. So, a lot of these people, like anybody, after a while, you recognize their voices and their calls, and you know where they live, and you've looked at their QRZ bio page, and you really, you get to. Like I said, some of these people you may never meet. Some, I have met in person, like at Dayton. So it was really cool.
It has been quite a time. The ARRL did it up big with the national parks on the air. Real quick before we go to break, I want to talk to you a little bit about. And we mentioned a few minutes ago about your car, but tell us. I mean, this is something that took your time for an entire year, and I'm sure it didn't happen for free. This had to have cost you something, because everything costs something. What do you figure this might have, if you don't mind sharing, what do you figure this may have cost you this year?
Not including the new radio, I would say off the top of my head probably about $3,000.
Wow.
And that, is tolls, food, gas, lodging, national park pass, the annual pass. Again, I also went to Maine twice and out to Texas, so it adds up.
Yeah. And so everyone out there complaining about the $19.95 to get your certificate, it didn't cost you $3,000. This man just gave you that. So if it was important, then you can get the and that's one of the things. I mean, since it grew into what it grew into, the league seems to be really doing it up big with the certificates and whatnot for the leaderboard and the activators and whatnot. It's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, and they spend a lot. I'm sure they spend a lot of money and a fair amount of time, and some probably after-hour emergency time with IT guys and everything else, making sure the leaderboard wasn't breaking, or things were running smoothly, or whatever the case. So I mean, they deserve a huge gratitude for that.
You mentioned just a few minutes ago that you did 80% of this with your Elecraft KX3, and welcome again to Elecraft, one of our new show sponsors. Totally stoked about that, by the way. But then later this year, close to the fall, I guess, you decided to pick up a 100-watt rig. What possessed you to do that?
What possessed me to do that? I decided, with 10 watts, single sideband, I decided I really wanted to get more into the West Coast, and I really wasn't reaching that far with the propagation. So I decided just to get a dedicated mobile rig, and then use the KX3 more for just portable use. Yeah.
And it shines at that. I mean, we've seen the pictures of you lying there in your hammock with your Ham Radio 360 knit cap, or toboggan, as we like to call it here in the Deep South, making contacts with your Pac-10 Mini strung in a tree. So it wasn't just sitting in a car. I mean, you went out in the park and activated these things. It wasn't just like you pulled up in the parking lot, screwed the antenna on, and went to work.
Yeah, and I should clarify. I mean, I used the KX3 solo. That's the only radio I had for 10 months, up until October. And then from there until the end of the year, portable was the KX3, and then just the Kenwood and the mobile for 2 months.
And just
a month and a half.
Just let everyone know, this is the same KX3 that you pretended to put in the garbage can when the KX2 was announced. It still works.
Exactly. Yeah. It still works. Yeah. There's still people that were confused by that, thinking I actually threw away a $1,200 radio.
That was I knew it was hilarious. I knew what you had done to start with, and I just had so much fun watching the reaction on that. It was great. It was great.
You gotta have fun.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's serious, because you're working and you're trying to do this and get these activations, and people are chasing you and wanting confirmations. But at the same time, man, you just, it's like anything, you just enjoy it. And I believe
exactly.
If anybody enjoyed National Parks on the Air this year, it was Stuart Thomas, KB1HQS. We're going to get back to him. We're going to dig a little deeper into his gear that he used. He just mentioned his KX3, his Kenwood TS480. We'll talk about that and more coming up.
Hi, Dan, KB6NU here. Whether you're studying for your tech license or looking to upgrade to general or extra, you should check out my no-nonsense amateur radio license study guides. Written in my easy-to-understand, no-nonsense style, they really are the easiest way to learn what you need to know to pass the test. And they are always up to date. The PDF version of the Technician Class Study Guide is free on my website at kb6nu.com/podcast, and all my study guides are available in print, PDF, Kindle, and EPUB versions. Let me help you have more fun with ham radio. Go to kb6nu.com/podcast and get started today.
Back with Stuart Thomas, KB1HQS, the number one activator for the National Parks on the air ARRL Centennial Celebration with the National Park Service here in the United States. And Stuart, man, just stoked to have you back on. Guys, I don't know if you know this, and I'm going to put if I can find it, I'll put the picture of Stuart and myself up on the show notes, but he's like 8 feet tall. And I think he weighs about 112 pounds with his shoes on. And he's probably even skinnier than that now after activating 503 parks throughout the national parks on the air. That's one of the things, you just don't know people until you meet them face to face. And I'm sure there were a lot of disappointed people when they met me. They're like, that's not what he sounds like up at Hamvention. Your voice didn't surprise me, nor did your face, because I'd seen you before online. But your height really, really freaked me out, especially with your OM standing there. And I'm like, he's a lot taller than his dad. So
it's the way it goes.
Yeah. Let me, before we talk about your gear, did your dad activate any with you this year?
I actually did, yeah, down in Texas at Big Thicket.
Fantastic. Cool guy. One of the coolest dads I've met in a long time. Congratulations on having a cool dad.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I learned all my ham radio stuff from him, so
he's going to send me a check. All right, so we're gearheads around here. I say it all the time. Everybody wants to know what you use to activate. We've mentioned KX3. We mentioned Pac-10. We've mentioned the TS480. Tell us a little bit about some of your experiences with the KX3.
Yeah, so the KX3 worked great. I really had a great experience with it. Unfortunately, I coupled it with 2 ham sticks, a 20-meter and a 40-meter ham sticks for the car. Mm-hmm. As we all know, are kind of glorified dummy loads. But, I made contacts, and it seemed to work pretty good. It definitely, things got better, though, once I put up a Wolf River coil vertical antenna on the car. Then things, resonant antenna, it worked a lot better. And, I love my KX3. Wouldn't trade for anything. Good
stuff. And during this time, we heard you. We saw your video that you did about the Pac-10 Minis and enjoyed that. George does a great job with those, and of course he sold out at Hamvention. Glad you got one so you could use it in your activations. Tell us just a smidge about your experience with the Pac-10 Mini.
Yeah, so the Pac-10 Mini, it's funny. I originally, before I even saw the Pac-10 or heard anything about it, I had this whole scheme about making an antenna that was self-winding with this and that. And then I saw the Pac-10 and I was like, well, great minds think alike. I don't even have to buy one. I just go get it, and I don't have to make it. So yeah, it's an awesome antenna. I really like the multi-band end fed. Probably use that the most. And then I got the dipole version, and I've been using that for the last month. And I have to say, of the 2 antennas, I've been using those the most.
Yeah.
And then I also use the Alex loop in downtown DC or other situations where, the National Park Service, you can't put anything in the ground and you can't put anything in the trees. So it makes it, depending on how much time you have and where you're located, it can make it a little challenging to put up something like a wire antenna.
Right.
So the Alex loop came in really handy because I had a tripod and the Alex loop, and I could be set up in under 5 minutes in a very small footprint, very unobtrusive. It really it worked out really well for the DC Memorial stuff.
Well, I know my buddy Julian, the Survival Tech Nerd, will appreciate that. He's a big Alex loop guy.
Yeah, it's a great antenna. I really like it, and I use it in DC where I was doing 6 activations a day, 2 days in a row, and you have to set up, tear down, walk, 200 yards, set up, tear down, and etc. So I needed something I could use really quickly and make contacts with. So it worked great.
Is that something you'd recommend to somebody that's doing portable ops or doing has very limited space for their operations, the Alex loop?
I would, if you're not going to run more than 10 watts. And it's kind of one of those antennas. It's kind of situational dependent. If you need to move around on, like, say in a contest, and you need to move around a lot on the band, it becomes a little work because it has a really narrow bandwidth, so you got to retune it a lot. Right. But if that's not the case, like for example for me, I'm going to find an open frequency and I'm just going to stay there until I'm done. It works great. And there's, like I said, if you're like, say you have a balcony of a hotel or an apartment, and you can't put up a wire antenna, that's a great antenna to use.
I was looking at some of your statistics you shared with me. When you were running QRP 10 watts with the Elecraft KX3, you were averaging about 10 contacts an hour. Yeah,
and I didn't run it through a spreadsheet or anything, but I would say, because 10 usually obviously is the minimum to make an activation, and I found it usually took about an hour. Now, someplace like downtown DC at one of the memorials, say at the Washington Monument, I had that in 8 minutes. But it just kind of. But I'd say overall throughout the year, it was about 10. It was about 10 QSOs an hour. So it took some dedication.
When you say you had those in 8 minutes, I mean you could pack up and stop right there, but you still had chasers, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you do about that? Do you get greedy and walk or what?
Well, it depends. Usually I would stay. It really depends on the schedule. Sometimes maybe I was just out running errands and I had 30 minutes that I could activate a park, and that's what I did. But the memorials, I usually did about an hour each for actual transmit time, and then tear up and tear down on either side of that. Excellent. So, cool. Sometimes you just can't spend 6 hours out at a site. It really just kind of depends what else is going on in life.
Because there is a thing out there called life. Exactly. And for a lot of people, you have a wife that rhymes with that, and she's wondering when you're coming home, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And now on the flip side, the Kenwood, at 100 watts, I was averaging probably 100 QSOs an hour. It was almost like shooting fish in a barrel the first time I really started using it. I was like, this is almost too easy because, I was used to call. I mean, I had the voice macro thing on the KX3 to call for me, and I would just call and let it loop. And, that's my thing. If you're doing QRP or the propagation's bad, don't be afraid to call CQ over and over. Right. I see a lot of people, they just don't call. It's really strange. I asked my dad about this, and he said it's definitely changed. He said back in the day, people used to call all the time. He says he doesn't hear as much anymore. Well, I don't hear it. I
was going to ask you about that because, we hear this question all the time. Okay, I'm a brand new general. Should I buy a FT817 or an Elecraft KX3, or should I buy a 100-watt radio? And I mean, it's so hard to answer because you really don't. You're not that person. Yeah. You don't know how to answer that for them personally. But you saw the difference. I mean, you operated for 8 months out of a year with a QRP rig. And then you just said when you went to that 100-watt rig, it was like shooting fish out of a barrel.
It was shocking. I should have done a video on it because I was like, this is so easy. And I'm getting people from Arizona and California and Hawaii. And I'm like, I never would have had this on the KX3. It just, if I had a better antenna, that definitely would have helped things out for sure. There's just a lot of variables. And, I also had a lot of people that were looking for me. If you're just a new ham that's running 10 watts on single sideband, you're going to really have to spend a lot of time, of course, depending on the band conditions in your antenna, to make that happen. Right. Your chances and your efficiency will increase significantly with 100 watts. So it's very doable with QRP, no question about it. But again, I'm also extremely persistent and very patient, and I'll spend a lot of time to make those contacts. So it really depends on you as a person, I guess, how much patience you have.
Yeah, and being a new guy, all your buddies saying, oh man, HF is where it's at. You got to get on HF. And, they get on there with, say, 10 watts and they go, they make about 2 calls of CQ and they don't realize that if someone's not driving by you on the VFO there, they may not know that you're there. And,
exactly.
Your dad makes a great point. We hear a lot of people complain about, the repeaters are so quiet. No one's on the repeaters anymore. Well, are you on the repeater?
Exactly. If you heard it on, you heard nobody. Did you call, or did you give your call sign? No. So I think propagation's terrible. It's like this self-fulfilling prophecy that if the space weather's bad, then I'm not gonna call. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was one day they were like the sunspots were like 0. It was like the worst conditions you could have possibly. People was, I'm not gonna go out. No, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna activate. I'm gonna make this activation happen just because it's gonna be so horrific. And running 10 watts through a ham stick, I'm going to make it happen. And that's what I did. And I think it took me 2.5 hours to do it. But I did it just to prove that it can be done. How much time do you want to devote to it, really?
Yeah, so that's a tip for new guys if you're coming into the hobby, coming into HF, getting got your general upgrade or whatnot. Don't be afraid to just sit there and call CQ. Maybe call CQ for 20 or 30, 40 seconds and stop and listen, and maybe call for that much more. Just keep calling because someone will hear you, but they're not going to hear you if you're not saying anything.
Exactly.
And nobody's going to get mad at you for sitting there and calling CQ unless you're talking over someone. Of course, that's why we always say is this frequency and use. And stop and listen. Of course, it's listen, 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 and listen again. But, yeah, man, take that. That's some good advice there. Use it. If you want to make contacts, that's a very good way to do it. Call CQ, right?
Yeah, I agree. And, 100 watts, if you're starting out new, is probably not a bad way to go right now, the way things are. It's just going to help increase your chances of having fun with the hobby initially. I'm not saying that there isn't, people out there that can do it in QRP right off the bat. Yeah. There's plenty of those that have for sure.
Well, you got the soda guys. Yeah. So, I mean, of course, if you've got a KX3, you can always put the amp with it if you need to. So,
exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of options, and it really comes down to your budget. So...
Yeah, no doubt.
Everybody has a different one. It's hard for me to tell you what I'd buy. So, I'd probably buy a KX2 because I'm really. I was telling George the other day. I said, I just love the fact that you could screw the antenna in the top, make it look like a GI Joe walkie-talkie. May not be worth.
That's true.
I may never use it that way, but that is just for me as a kid of the '80s. I'm down with that. I'm not too proud. Hey, you did more than just single sideband though. You used multiple modes during your activations. What were some of the ones that you had good success with, and some that you probably need to continue to brush up on?
I primarily use single sideband. I did some CW as well. I'm not a CW champ, so with a pile up of CW, it made it a little challenging for me. I'm usually about 11 words per minute on a good day, so it was a good way to help increase my speed though. PSK31, I didn't have a lot of luck with, mostly because I was having technical issues on my end with Windows laptop not performing well. But I did make contacts on that, and let's see, RIDI, I did a little bit of that. And just to try it out, 2 meter FM HT up in Shenandoah National Park. It's kind of funny. Like I've been in spots where it seems like in the cities, 2 meter simplex. Like I tried calling here in DC and I got nothing. I go out to Shenandoah and I was getting people right and left. So it's kind of funny. You never really know.
Well, it seems to me, and it's funny you say that my experience with 2 meter simplex on the calling frequency is the further I am away from society, the more activity that there is. It's almost like the guys are sitting around in their mountains and they're talking on 2 meter simplex.
It seems to be. I mean, up in Maine, I found that I talked to many of the same guys over and over who were just hanging out and, would answer my call, which I was very appreciative, especially doing soda. And the other thing I found was not just having one mode. If the propagation was really bad, being able to do 2 meter FM was key. If I couldn't make contacts on the HF really well, I would switch over to that, and that saved me numerous times.
Nice. Hey, it's whatever it takes, right?
Exactly.
We'll be back with Stuart Thomas here in just a couple of minutes. We're talking National Parks on the Air. He's the #1 activator from 2016. Back in just a moment here on Ham Radio 360 Podcast. Hey, we've still got some of the boards available for pre-order for the Antenna Analyzer Kit. If you're interested, you can find them in the swag store at hamradio360.com. Click on the shopping tab. Get connected there. We've got stuff, stickers, patches. I might be out of stickers, but I know we've got patches. We've got toboggans, knit caps. We have a lot of great things, including the Antenna Analyzer Board. You're looking for one of those, you can find them online at hamradio360.com. All right, we're back with Stuart Thomas, KB1HQS. He is the, like I've said numerous times, the #1 activator in the national parks on the air. Special events, can't call it a contest, event here with the ARRL in 2016. Congratulations again on being the top dog.
Thank you.
Does T-Dog know that he's the top dog?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if he does. we have to get some cookies for that.
He's had some miles under his belt this year, along with you. His collar, I guess I should.
His paws.
Yeah. Now, you can't say that you do something like this to the extent that you did this year. 503 activations, chasing all over the place, activating all over the U.S. You've had to have learned some stuff, and it's fun to talk about, what you used and the parks you went to, the funny stories. But this is really kind of the meat taters kind of stuff here. What can you share with us for someone who's maybe interested in portable activating or portable operating, I should say, now that the activations are over? What did you learn that you can share with people from your experience?
Sure. So, National Parks obviously is over. It was only for 2016. However, a lot of these things I'm about to tell you can apply to all these other ham radio operating programs. The first one is I had a notebook for my SOTA and national park stuff. Mm-hmm. And basically what I did is I did printouts of all the designators. I kept all my park maps. And the reason having the hard copies is, 99% of the time I could get a cell signal if I need to look up a designator. But there was always that, 0.1% that I didn't, like Shenandoah National Park. And now I'm like, crap, what's the designator, So being able to have a hard copy of whatever designators for whatever program or information that you need, having a hard copy of that's key. And then I also use Google to look at maps of the area that I was going, and not just the roads, but also satellite view and street view. For example, there was one, I was like, oh, that's going to be a perfect spot. And then I zoomed in on satellite and I saw a huge, power poles and electrical lines. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to set up there. But I wouldn't have seen that unless I had driven there, unless I had looked it up.
Right.
So being able sometimes just to kind of scope it out on Google Maps is key. And I would say also just keeping things simple when you're going portable. I know everybody likes to cram lots of things into boxes and, have these huge things. And if you're going to operate it out of the car or, drag it to the picnic table 10 feet away, then that's fine. But, if you're going to go more than 100 yards and put it in a backpack or anything like that, everything's going to change. And you need to have it simple, lightweight, and really easy to use. And what I do is the other thing is to have a checklist. Especially if you're going to be away from your car where all your stuff is to have a checklist with all your gear to make sure you don't forget something. That's key.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Ounces is pounds?
Yeah, ounces is pounds, and pounds is pain, or something like that. Yeah, it's again, that's just more about backpacking and operating like on summits. But that also just includes if you're operating mobile, because let me tell you, if you forget, there's many Facebook stories posts about, I forgot this piece of equipment. Does anybody have a cable for the remote head to the main? That those kind of things. That's a bummer, especially if you've driven 6 hours to go activate a park or a summit or a lighthouse or whatever, and you don't have it.
Right.
That really stinks. In fact, I had one, I was doing a dual national parks and summits on the air activation in Shenandoah, and I forgot coax cable. How convenient. So I had to pack everything back up and walk down the mountain. It wasn't that far, fortunately, back to the car. Yeah. So what I've done is I put an emergency antenna in my KX3 bag, and it has a BNC to a dual binding post adapter.
Yeah. And
just took some 26 gauge magnet wire, and I think it was like 58 feet for the positive side and 18 for the counterpoise or the radial side, just to make like a random wire setup.
Yeah.
And it's not the world's greatest antenna, but it'll work, especially if you don't have coax and you've hiked 4 miles up a summit. I'll take it. So it's having a completely self-contained setup, or again, you could put coax in there too in an antenna, but having a backup system is really nice to have.
Yeah. And we hear and see a lot of guys who are putting stuff together for an emergency type situation, and all of this applies to the same thing. It's you have to have a lot of forethought. It's more than just buying stuff, putting it in a duffel bag, and tossing it in the closet, waiting for something bad to happen.
Exactly. And going to a park, if you take that gear that you're going to use in the quote unquote emergency, and you go to your local park and set it up, and find out what you're missing, because you'll find out really quickly you forgot the coax or the power cable doesn't fit correctly into whatever,
Left the battery at home. Yeah.
You left the battery. Yes. Oh yeah. On the charger. In fact, yeah. So the other thing I have is I got some paint sticks, and you ever seen those remove before flight little tags, like keychain deals. So I put those on the top of the paint stick, and what I do in my backpack that carries my laptop for my ham radio stuff and my battery for my radio, when I take those out to charge, I put one of those in so that the tag is just kind of hanging out. And I guess if you want to get super fancy, you could get one that said, battery or laptop or what. I just got the cheap ones off Amazon. Yeah. But the reason I did that was because one day I forgot my laptop because it was at home on the charger, because, I just grabbed the bag. I didn't think about it. Right. So if I see that tag, I know something's missing, and I can tell by the compartment what's missing.
Well, a lot of guys with their medical bags, they do color coding and stuff. And it's just, I've seen people take that same system, apply it to ham radio for portable operations. And that's just another example of how you can do things like that to remind yourself before you walk out that door, you need this. You'll need, when you get there, you'll wish you had this piece.
Yeah, no doubt. And, being able to go through and having a space for everything. And I know if I need my voice recorder, I know exactly where it is. If, everything has a place. So it makes it really easy just to go through and see what's missing.
Not everybody's that guy either. Not everybody is that guy. And, there were probably some pretty hilarious attempted activations this year, I would imagine, that were probably very frustrating for different people for different reasons. But I can just imagine, it would be me. I'd drive out somewhere and not have the radio with me, So.
Missing the power cable.
Yeah, it's life, man. It's life.
Well, at least you can still go to the park, though.
Yeah, I got to pass. We're in. So we talked a little bit a few minutes ago about calling CQ. Any operating procedures you might have kind of learned or honed during this time?
Yeah, one of the things I hadn't done before, I've done lots of things in the dark. I've scuba dived in the dark, I've hiked in the dark, biked in the dark, but I've never operated a radio. And if listening to that, it doesn't sound really all that impressive. But if you get in your car and you turn off all the lights, no dome lights, and you turn your laptop on, your radio on, if you don't have a backlit keyboard, well, guess what? It's going to be really hard to see the keys. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Yeah. But I was like, I can't type. I can't hold a flashlight in one hand, type with the other hand, and talk with them. It just doesn't work. So I came up with all these really, extravagant systems. Oh, I'll do this and I'll do that. And I realized, all I need to do is take one of the two headlamps that I have in my bag and wrap it around the very top of the display of the laptop so that the headlamp itself is right in the middle and just kind of, because of gravity, will just kind of hang down, turn it on, and now I've got instant light on the keyboard, and I can see what I'm doing.
Nice.
So
that's a good hint. That's a great.
I don't know if that description makes sense, but it's it was just a really simple way to. And you could also put it on your head too, but I just found it was just easier to put it on the laptop.
Yeah, that way when you weren't looking around, you flashing everybody around, cruising or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So in Winter Field Day, we're right on top of that, and some great stuff to be able to apply to Winter Field Day coming up. Any portable operation, soda, it's going to be warm before we know it, and the activations there will begin again. Any further things you learned about operating portable that you think someone may not know or that would benefit from knowing?
Yeah, I would say two things. Number one, spotting rules. Initially I heard of spotting. I was like, I don't know if this is really my thing. But in hindsight, we all have limited amount of time to enjoy this hobby, and I'm all about spotting. It makes life. Spotting is what got me my activations, along with the chasers, obviously.
Right.
Without spotting, it would have been a lot more difficult. So being able to spot, and I used a DeLorme InReach, which is a two-way satellite communicator using the Iridium system, and that was really helpful because it also acts as a tracking device, kind of like APRS. So if I was going to a series of parks that people really wanted, I'd say, hey, you can go to my website, you can see my map that has the real-time tracking, and you can follow me as I go to these different sites, so you have an idea where I'm at. And in fact, Garmin bought out DeLorme, and they're coming out with a new GPS InReach model, which is pretty cool. So that's kind of exciting. But the other thing is the social media. I really used ARRL. I think really used the social media for the first time this year with the National Parks on the Air, and really promoted it. And I think that's a great thing, and glad to see that, and hopefully there's more of it. I use that a lot to my advantage, saying, hey, tomorrow I'm going to Harper's Ferry, I'm going to activate this at this time. If you're going to go out and do, operate, even if you're just going to go out on your own, you want someone to talk to and make sure that you have success. Say, hey, I'm a new QRP operator or a new guy who's doing portable ops, and I'm going this area tomorrow. Will someone, set up a schedule with me and make contact with me? So use it to your advantage and use the spotting. And the other thing, probably most importantly, is if you are interested in, say, a couple different programs like U.S. Islands, Lighthouses, Worldwide Flora and Fauna, use those to your advantage and find a spot that has 2 or 3 of those that meet the criteria for that one spot. For example, the summit, the SOTA Summit in Shenandoah National Park. I advertised on both Facebook and my email and all this other stuff saying, hey, I'm going to be at this summit that's in Shenandoah, and I can give you designators for both. So I told the SOTA guys on Facebook, I told the National Parks people, I did on Twitter, and that just draws in more people to increase your chances of making contacts. And if you had 3 different designators you can give out, even better.
Well, I watch the National Parks on the Air page on Facebook, as well as I follow some guys around on Twitter that do the satellite communications, and it's kind of the same thing. They're like, hey, I'm getting ready for this one. Can you meet me on the next pass and things? It's some people say, oh, it's not ham radio. No, it's not ham radio. It's called social media, and it can really enhance those types of contacts. Now, I'm the guy that doesn't use a spotting program. If I get a chance to operate HF, I come up here and I start turning the big knob. And yep. I know not everybody does that, and I don't have an opinion necessarily one way or the other. I just don't use it because I don't have a lot of internet to use to see where anybody is. But in this particular instance, the social media aspect of the entire national parks on the air kind of became a monster of its own.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. I forget how many thousands of people they had in the group. It was huge. And, what you're saying about, turning the dial. I mean, there was many times I just spun the knob and I found parks that were calling CQ working as a chaser doing the park to park that they weren't spotted for whatever reason.
Right.
So I got lots of contacts that way. Just because DX Summit says X, Y, and Z is on this frequency, you may find somebody else, some really cool contact that's calling that isn't spotted. So, the spotting stuff isn't always 100%. And, and again, it's a hobby. So you just do what makes you happy.
Exactly. All right. So, anything that you wish you would have done, any shoulda, coulda, woulda kind of deals for the national parks?
Yeah, I wish I had done some of the satellite communication stuff. I had all the gear for it. I just never got around to doing it. And I wish I had chased more parks as an activator because we did, kind of like SOTA, they have the summit to summit.
Yeah.
We should kind of get a priority to jump in the line or the pile up. Same with park to park. If I was calling CQ and I got a huge pile up, I might say, hey, any park activators, go ahead. Well, if you're activating a park in South Carolina, then you get to jump ahead of the line and get those points. So
nice.
That was a lot of fun. I didn't start until I think September or October. So, and I ended up with 108, which wasn't bad, for just, I worked anybody and everybody that was a park I was like, I'll work you. I don't care if I worked you before or not. It was just having fun, giving everybody else points as well, contacts.
When you look back 10 years down the road from now, do you think this will be the highlight that it is right now in your memory of operating ham radio?
Yeah, I would say so. It's I love national parks. I love hiking and being outside, and then I like working portable HF radio. So it was, I loved it. I don't think I could have done any more of it than I wanted to. It
was almost created just for you.
I know, it seems like in a way, huh?
Really. A skinny guy that likes to hike. And
yeah, it's perfect. I did 6 activations the first week. It was all PSK too, because I at the time I was just set for PSK, so that's what I did.
Yeah.
And it was great. Now everybody's like, well, what now? What are we going to do now? Well, I'm doing SOTA hopefully on Sunday. I'm going to go out to Shenandoah National Park and try to do summits. So, why not get out there and do it? There's tons of programs, and even if you don't want to be an official program of whatever sort, just go out and do your own thing.
Before I let you go, I got to ask you, when in this process did you say, I'm going to be the number one activator or die?
I never really thought that. It was more of I had my personal goals. I was at like 2 something at that point, and it was funny because in August it kind of slowed down. It was kind of the summer slump, and then I thought, this thing is just gonna kind of fizzle out. And then September came, and it started picking up steam like crazy. And then I got the new Kenwood in October, and it was getting really crazy. And then November and December were completely off the charts. I had parks that had activated many times before, and I was getting new people I had never even worked before, and I was like, this is crazy. And it just it was it was something else.
Well, congratulations to you. I know it was not a contest, but you're still the winner. Along with everybody else.
You'd asked me. What I was sorry, I went off track there. What I was thinking was I had a goal of 500.
Okay.
After I around the 200 range, I was looking to. I was like, I wonder if I can hit 500 and 10,000 contacts. Those were my numbers, and I just squeaked under. So that was more what I was aiming for more than anything.
I got you. Well, like I said, I never saw this coming, and I don't think many people, if anybody, really saw it becoming what it did. But man, it has been very little involvement I've had with the actual event. Watching the event kind of play out in front of me has been very exciting. And I think it's been a great boost for the hobby. And I want to just thank you personally and publicly here for your contribution to it, Stuart. You did a great job for the hobby. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Cale. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. And again, we always love having you on the show. We really need to do another soda show. So kind of start thinking about that. We need to.
Okay.
We've had one real early on. I'd like to come back and talk about it again because there may or may not be reasons for me to be talking about portable operations in the near future. So that's really all I can say. I can tell you that it's been great. It's been great getting to know you. Been great following you around on this journey of national parks on the air. Are you going to do Hamvention again this year?
Probably not, no.
What? You're not going to come like put a crown on and stand on a podium or something?
Did you not read my Dayton blog that I wrote about Dayton?
Well, but it's not Dayton anymore. It's Xenia. It's a whole new thing.
It's still in Ohio. No, actually, I got other stuff going on this year. I don't think I'll be able to make it.
Well, you'll be missed, I'm sure.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it. Well, thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. It's always our pleasure. Well, that's going to wrap another episode of the Ham Radio 360 podcast. Again, thank you so much for coming by, hanging out with us. We appreciate you listening. Thank you, Stuart. Appreciate you, man. KB1HQS, one of the tallest and nicest dudes that I know. I really hope to catch up with them again sometime soon. Hey, don't forget, if you're looking for some stuff, it's all on hamradio360.com. Show notes, links, videos, all of our sponsors are there. Everything about this show is at hamradio360.com. Appreciate you going and checking that out. If there's something on there that you're not aware of, don't know how to use or something, let us know. We want to make it the best user experience that we can. Again, that's hamradio360.com. Big shout out to Elecraft.com, our new show sponsor. Our buddies down at Main Trading Company as well with the $10 coupon HR360 on the Kenwood TS480. And wow, I believe that's about it. Going to be back here next time, and we're going to talk APRS. You're going to love it. It's a very, very informative show. Can't wait to share it with you. But between now and then, get ready for George and Jeremy. Appreciate you so much again. Happy New Year. God bless every one of you. Thank you so much for listening. It's 73, y'all.
Thank you for listening to Ham Radio 360, brought to you by mtcradio.com. For more information about the program, visit hamradio360.com. Till next time, 73s, y'all.